St. Thomas Aquinas says, what do the liberal arts produce? They produce works of reason. So the work is actually the person that practices it. That's what a classical liberal arts Catholic education is about, happiness. It's not about power or money. It's ultimately about beatitude, right? What the Greeks called eudaimonia, the life of blessedness. As a community, let's go to the tabernacle. Let's go to the heart of the church in the Eucharist and say, Lord, this is your school. It's always been your school. What do you want for Saint Agnes? And that's what I love about this place, is that's where it always begins. We're at a turning point.
We are.
And I think we've recognized that the status quo of just doing what the public schools have done with a crucifix on the wall doesn't work anymore. Our students are going to be prepared to go into a world that's kind of forgotten who it is and where it's going and what it's about, on fire and with knowledge and formation to really be leaders. Awesome.
Mr. David Gockowski, welcome to the podcast.
Good to be here. Thanks so much for having me, Neil.
Yeah. So you are fresh back to Saint Agnes, new lower school director. How have the first few weeks of the school year been going?
It's so great to have the students back. You know, when you're preparing for the school year throughout the summer, it's hard to imagine what you're doing. You can kind of get lost in the weeds. And the students come back and you realize, this is why we're here, right? To serve them and to be with them and to form them. So it's been really great to have them back and to meet new parents, see some parents that I knew as a teacher and many new families. Lots of new faculty this year that are really zealous and love the profession of teaching and really feel called to be here. It's not just a job for them. It's a calling within a calling. And so that makes my job just incredibly joyful. Even in the midst of the busyness of leadership, it's a joyful battle. So it's been great. It's been really great to be back. And I feel like I've come home. So
Yeah, because you were here. How many years were you here initially as a teacher?
I think I taught here for 8 years. Did some teaching in public school and then did some student teaching with Mrs. Vance in second grade. And then did some other teaching at other Catholic schools and came back here as a fourth grade teacher before I left for about 2 years with ICLE. So as I was traveling around the country with my previous job, I just always felt in my heart, I belong at St. Agnes. It's where my family is. This is like a home for me. So that feels really good, I got to tell you. Yeah. It's awesome. It's like a homecoming.
Yeah, well, one of my, I'm always photographing on the first day of school.
Right, yeah.
Because everybody's clean cut, everybody's excited, maybe a little nervous, but mostly excited, hopefully, to be here. And one of my favorite photos that I will remember forever is that I happened to be standing there when your family was walking into the school. And so I got a couple photos of you just seeing your kids, giving your daughter a big hug and a big bear hug. And I just thought, what a blessing and a privilege it is for me to be able to be there in that moment, to capture moments like that, where maybe to a lot of people it's just another picture, but what is, can you speak a little bit more about
absolutely. I saw that picture. My mom sent it to me and I thought,
she's my number one Facebook.
Yes. Your mom, my mom is a huge fan of you. So, well, you do a great job, Neil, of capturing those moments that are otherwise sometimes hidden or overlooked. But those are the moments that really make up a great education, right? It's a family, and there's a lot of families here. So that moment was special for me to see that. My daughter is like one of my number one fans right now. She's in second grade, and I hope it remains that way. You know, I think every father hopes my kids will still be big fans of me even as they're teenagers. But, you know, the reality sets in of adolescence. But right now my daughter is just a number one fan of me and has always given me hugs. So that was a beautiful moment. A beautiful moment, too, for me as a principal, as a leader, to see I'm a father and a husband first and a teacher, and that my leadership comes out of those. It's not like this is some job that's just completely disjointed from family life. I'm here to form my own children, and by extension, all the other students here in the lower school as kind of children, right? I see them sort of under my care, under my fatherly care while they're here at school. And I think every teacher has to do that, right? We stand in loco parentis and we think, what do your parents want? Well, they sent you here for a reason. They want us to form them. They want us to really enlighten their minds and inflame their hearts. So I think that moment was a perfect moment for the beginning of the year. Like, this is why I'm here, right?
Have your kids said anything about having you back in the building every day? Yeah,
absolutely. My son Matthias is in kindergarten, so I think he has been kind of surprised that Daddy's here, and that means he can call me out when I'm headbutting my friends at the lunch table and acting like a kindergartner. And but I think he's been really delighted. My son Leo had me when I was a teacher here. He didn't have me as a teacher, but he had me here for this first year in kindergarten. So I think he's really happy to have Dad back in the building. And it's been great. Driving into school and listening to music and praying on the way in. It's been really precious family time. So, yeah.
And you, how many kids do you have?
I have 5 children right now.
Okay.
9, 7, 5, 3, and 1. So we're kind of the odd family right now. The odd years.
Now, is it just you driving the kids in every day? Does Bernadette get a little break there?
Yeah. So I mostly drive them in and get here around 7:15 and get set up for the school day, and then my wife will pick them up. God bless my wife, over the last couple of years has done all the driving because I've been traveling.
Yeah.
So she's just super happy about that, relieved. We live about 40 minutes away, so it's a commitment, but it's one that we're 100% behind. So, but that's been great to, in the morning to take that as an opportunity to kind of set the day, to pray, to maybe listen to an audiobook, a podcast, to listen to music and talk, right? Just to have time with your kids and learn, what are you worried about today? What are you looking forward to today? What's going on? And I think, at the end of the day, they're more tired and kind of wound up, and they want a snack and they want to go play. Beginning of the day, I think they're a little bit more contemplative. And so you can have some really beautiful conversations in the morning on the drive in. I always look forward to those drives.
Yeah. So I want to ask you, I want to get more into your time at ICLE and maybe what you were able to see across the country as part of that. But I want to take you back to when you first were here. I mean, how did you get here in the first place? How did you discover this place?
Right.
Talk a little bit more about your initial introduction to Saint Agnes.
So I knew of Saint Agnes well before I started teaching here. I was actually a seminarian for the Archdiocese, and this was my parish. So I am in university, at college, I was studying Catholic studies, philosophy. I did some music, and I was looking for a traditional parish, a parish with the Latin Mass. I was really attracted to that. I grew up in the suburbs, and there was not a lot of great liturgy growing up. So as soon as I went to my first Latin Mass here at Saint Agnes, I was hooked. That's kind of how I found the school and the church. After I left seminary, I was really called to teaching, I felt, because what I loved about my time in seminary was the Catholic intellectual tradition. I loved to spend time studying, loved the classroom experience and the sort of teaching, preaching element of it. So I thought, well, Catholic education is it's a branch of the missionary heart of the church. It extends out of that heart of Mother Church to teach all nations, right? This final command that Jesus gives to his apostles. It's not just like a nice service that we offer. And so I knew right away that, like, if I'm not called to be a priest, I'm probably called to be a teacher in some way. This is where my heart is. So after a couple of years, I was working construction. I was doing all sorts of jobs. I thought, I got to get back into teaching. Did special education for a while, a couple of years. That was a great experience. Worked in a level 3 emotional behavior disorder school where you'd have students just struggling to regulate emotions and sometimes running out of the classroom and throwing things. And your job was really to help regulate them and to help humanize them and to love them. And it was a great experience. I was hooked. And I thought, I want to do more of this. So I looked at various Catholic schools, and then I saw, St. Agnes, I know that parish well, should look into it. And looked at the philosophy of education document. And I thought, well, this is a school that's thought deeply about what it means to be a school, right? We're not just here because of all the extracurricular, or we're just a parish school. It's like, no, we have a mission and a vision, and we know what we're about. So I called Dr. Ferdinand up and I said, hey, I'm getting back into education. I need a place to do student teaching. Would you consider me? And he was like, well, I don't know, but yeah, we'll try you out. Come on in and let's talk. And immediately hit it off with Dr. Ferdinand. Set me up with Layla Vance, who's a master teacher. I knew right away as I was teaching in her classroom that I couldn't teach second grade. That was too young for me. Yeah, it's a challenge. I think I realized, upper elementary is really the sweet spot for me. But I learned so much from her and really fell in love with the school. Just saw the families, the students, and the formation that we were giving these students. These second graders knew more about their faith than I did in high school. And I was kind of, to my shame, but also just amazed at that. And they were on fire for it too. So long story short, after that, I thought, I've got to get back in this building as soon as I get my teaching license and I get some experience under my belt. And the rest is history, as they say, and have always felt like this is the place where I want to be. This is where God is on the move, right? Aslan's on the move.
Yeah. So you then pivot to ICLE. How many years? 2 years?
I did that for about 2.5 years, two full school years. Yeah. So the Institute for Catholic Liberal Education is this really good institution that's been around for about 25 years, international now. And their whole mission is to really renew Catholic education. There's a lot of institutes that are all about classical education, but they're unique in that they're finding this beautiful marriage between the liberal arts, classical education, and Catholic education. And it turns out that the two of them, of course, are intertwined historically, right? What is it that brought the liberal arts and classical education to the West? It was the church. So their whole mission is to say, let's go back to our roots as Catholic educators. And that means that there's been a kind of blip in history in the sort of historical development of education, which we call progressivism. John Dewey, Horace Mann. And as you study that history, I think it's really enlightening. You can see that, in fact, it's quite new, right? It's been in Catholic education for like 50 years. It's been in the West for 100 years. It's not the whole story of what Western Catholic education is. And it's also kind of rooted in a sort of anti-Catholic atheism. It comes out of the Prussian schools, which are all about making good soldiers and good workers. It had nothing to do with forming the humanity or forming the hearts of people. And sadly, I think that kind of philosophy of education seeped into our public school system and then eventually Catholic education. What we've seen at ICLE is over the last 25 years is there's a renewal, a reawakening to our roots, to our tradition as Catholic educators, in terms of our practice as well as our philosophy. So the last 2 years have been a great gift to me. I've gotten to kind of zoom out and see the whole picture and see these beautiful schools all over the nation that are trying to do what we're doing here. And I consider them friends and allies in this great work. And you can see the fight is real too, right? There's so much to be done. There's so much work to be done. From the little things like hiring good teachers to writing a great philosophy and advertising, but you have teachers that are on fire and that want to serve their students. But as I was doing that over the last couple of years, I just kept comparing these schools to Saint Agnes. I thought, nothing can compare, right? Like a bad day here beats a good day anywhere else. So, as I always say.
What are some of those distinguishing factors in your mind that set us apart?
Some schools, there's many. I think some schools will have a couple of people that are really dedicated Catholics, right? And not only just Orthodox in belief, but also in practice and take their prayer life seriously, read scripture, go to adoration and mass. St. Agnes, that's almost everyone. In fact, that is everyone.
Yeah.
That you encounter people and they openly share about their relationship with Christ and the beauty of the sacraments and our faith, and they're excited about it. That's rare. You'll have a good school that maybe has 50% of the faculty that are like that. In terms of like the pedagogy, the formation of the teachers to really form students, there's a real art there. And again, I think you'll see maybe one or two teachers and maybe a leader if you're lucky that has really good formation in how do I really teach? How do I hone this craft? And at St. Agnes, it's everyone. And even the new teachers are zealous. I want to learn. So you step into a school and you immediately see, even from its aesthetic and from how people carry themselves, what we're about. And when you walk into this building, you can see, people they have smiles on their faces. They're ready to welcome their students. And they feel like they can be fully themselves here as Catholic school teachers. So,
one question I'm sure that you had to answer during your time at ICLE, but you hear Institute for Catholic Liberal Education.
Yes.
Nowadays we hear liberal, conservative, we get all up in a tizzy.
Exactly.
So when we talk about a Catholic liberal education, when we talk about the liberal arts, what does that mean? Yeah,
that's a great question. Yeah, I had to explain that a lot, especially if I went to like South Dakota or something. What? You're liberal? And I would have to say we're not social progressives. It's not a political statement. It's really a statement about the true meaning of that word. There's been so much shifting in etymology and the meaning of words in our time, even in the last 10 years. And some of those words you kind of have to let go. The definition and the shift in meaning has been so radical. Liberal is a one that I think is worth rescuing. It's worth defending and defining well. It really is a fascinating word. Comes out of a Latin word, which means both liberty, but also a kind of education, a formation. It's even related to a Latin word that means book, or like a page in a book. Library and liberty have this common root. Because I think our ancestors knew that to be truly free, we had to be formed and educated, right? In other words, because of Adam and Eve, freedom has to be relearned. It has to be formed in our hearts. We're not automatically free. And so because of that, there's particular arts that help form a man, a woman, to be completely free, to give ultimately their life as a gift to others and to God. So the liberal arts are these 7. At one time there was 12. They've changed a lot. But eventually by, I think, the 4th century, they're kind of canonized as these 7. And you have these 3 arts of language. So the trivium, where the 3 roads meet, grammar, logic, and rhetoric. And then you have the 4 arts of number, the quadrivium. You've got arithmetic, music, astronomy, and geometry, right? Not exactly in that order. Astronomy sometimes is kind of thought of as the highest of the quadrivium, sometimes music. But these are really looking at the relationship of number as well. So we think of math and science, but they're more than that. And they all have to do with being a practitioner as well. So the liberal arts aren't just something that you study in a book, you actually do them, like in art.
Right.
An art traditionally was defined as something that produces something else, right? So there's a product there. St. Thomas Aquinas says, what do the liberal arts produce? They produce works of reason. So the work is actually the person that practices it. So they're unique. They're not like the visual arts. They're not like, they're not like culinary arts. The formation happens right there in the person. One of the great saints of the church, St. Albert, said, he's commenting on the Proverbs. He says, wisdom has built herself a house and hewn out 7 pillars. And you think, oh, the pillars are going to be the sacraments. What is he going to compare these pillars to? He says, no, the house is the Blessed Virgin Mary and the church. And he says the 7 pillars are the 7 liberal arts. It's fascinating. And as you read, you realize that the church took these liberal arts from the classical world, from the ancient world, and saw in them this real potential to form the humanity of people, right? So when Christ our Lord says, go out and teach all nations, the church says, we need to do that well. We need to take that seriously. And that means, of course, preaching the gospel to them, but also helping form their humanity so that they're ready to receive the gospel, that fertile ground of the soul. And the church automatically saw the wisdom of these arts and their power to do so. So it's very much part of our tradition. It's very much going back to our roots as Catholic educators. And I think in a lower school, you really focus on grammar, right? The grammar is the emphasis, as well as arithmetic. Those first 2, and I'd love to talk more about those. But I could, as you can tell, I can talk for hours about this. So.
Maybe a kind of a pointed question about it. How does the teaching and the learning in a liberal arts based classical, we can talk more about that term too, but how is the learning? Because you mentioned there's a practicality, there's a putting it into practice so does that change how you teach it as well?
Okay. Yeah, absolutely. And it took me a while as a teacher to really figure that out. There's an art there, right? John Paul II, Saint JP2 said that the supreme art in his letter to artists is teaching. He thought of that as the supreme art. Which is a beautiful reflection to see. Out of all the great artists that have ever existed, the teacher is the supreme artist. And that means that you have to become a practitioner of the liberal arts yourself first before you can give it to others. So I think that's the first principle when it comes to how do we teach it, is this old saying, you can't give what you don't have. Yeah.
It's very important what you're saying. So.
There we go. Not used to speaking to microphones.
Keep going. Sorry, I interrupted.
No, you're good. But you can't give what you don't have, right? So
right.
I think that's a unique perspective to see that's where I have to begin. In other words, I have to become someone. It's not just about my certificate as a teacher or even the facts that I have in my head. It's about who am I, right? Am I a free person? Can I do geometry and comment on it and teach others how to do it? And also wonder about it, right? Especially in a lower school, elementary school, do I have a love and a zeal for learning? Mm-hmm. If I don't have that, I can't expect that in my students. So I think that's the first place. Do I look at my students and do I see anything lacking in them? The first question I should ask is it in me first, right? Mm-hmm. Do they love arithmetic and mathematics? If not, do I love it? And if not, maybe I have to step back and find the beauty of it again. I have to rediscover it again. And I think our teachers know that well, right? They understand this is about communicating a love first and foremost.
Even just as somebody who pops into a classroom here and there to take a couple photos or whatever.
Right.
It seems like every time I'm doing that, the teachers here are engaged. Absolutely. And they're zealous is a great word for it.
Yeah.
You can tell there's a passion there. Mm-hmm. Yeah, keep going. What else?
Absolutely. You can see that. And there's a desire to keep being a learner, right? So that you're a student before you're a teacher, right? Mm-hmm. And a disciple. Yeah, I think, and then it goes into, all sort of other practical implications. So, beginning there, we have to have it first, but then looking at the anthropology, right? So a great artist looks at his medium, right? Michelangelo, he can see in the marble the image that he wants to bring out, right? Bernini, these great sculptors. The supreme artists, teachers have to do that in their students. Our students come in maybe in kindergarten, first, second grade, and we can kind of see the rough stone. And a good artist doesn't get discouraged by that. They go, yeah, but in that rough stone, I can see this image in terms of their human formation, their spiritual formation, their academic, intellectual formation. And I know how to carve out that image, right? Slowly over time. And what's beautiful about that is that image isn't set by the teacher. It's given to us by God, right? We're made in the image and likeness of God. So we have these great examples of the saints, right? Who many of them were great scholars as well. So I think after the first principle of I cannot give what I don't have, the second one is to remember the medium, which is the human anthropology of the child. In other words, our children have a destiny, an internal destiny. And it sounds like I'm waxing poetic, but it has deep implications for how you teach, right? If you walk into a classroom and you think, these students are here because their parents paid tuition and we want them to have a good job and make money, and that's all true. Right? That's true. If that's the highest goal that we have for them, we can't actually form them. On the other hand, if we walk in and we see these are souls that are made by God, right? Souls and bodies. Body is important too. And destined for eternal glory. And that I'm privileged now to be a part of that journey. In fact, I get to, with these youngest students, lay these solid foundations that are going to be with them for the rest of their lives. What does that mean? That means how I teach matters deeply. Right? And then there's many other implications, like having questions be primary, putting the responsibility of learning on the shoulders of students, right? Understanding the developmental and anthropological stages of students, that second graders are very different than fourth graders in terms of how they're thinking and their behavior, and understanding that all within the context of my broader mission as a teacher. I think there's many other things too that are implied here too, like going back to the sources, right? Great books, beautiful artwork. We have this thing that we know works, right? Classical education works. It's worked for millennia. Yeah. It's the greatest scientists and thinkers and rhetoricians and leaders throughout history are all formed in the liberal arts, right? Even people like who are autodidacts who taught themselves, right? I think of Frederick Douglass, Abraham Lincoln. Where did they go? They went to the sources of our tradition. They went to the King James Bible. Many of them were Protestant. They went to the fathers of the church. They went to the Columbian Orator, a collection of great speeches throughout Western history. And these formed people like Frederick Douglass, Abraham Lincoln, Martin Luther King. So it's all about saying, the practical implications of our pedagogy all begin there. Who is the student? Who's the medium of this supreme art?
Yeah. So is there a distinction between classical, liberal arts? Mm-hmm. We use them both kind of hand in hand, it seems, but is there?
Yes.
Yeah. What can you, maybe distinguish that for us?
Absolutely. Yeah. So I think there's been a kind of shift in meaning in classical. When we think of, of course, classical music, kind of timeless music. And I think that's how I like to think of it. In education, there was a phase there where classical really meant from the classical period. And I think that's true, right? We want to look at truth, goodness, and beauty, and the classical world brought us a lot, right? They really laid the foundations of Western civilization. I think the distinction, though, is that it doesn't end there, right? So what I like to say is that our tradition begins in the classical world, but it ends in freedom in Christ. So the classical piece kind of speaks to our beginnings, both in time as well as in the foundations that we're trying to lay for our students. The liberal arts speak to our ends. They speak to what we're about, where we're going, ultimately glory in heaven with God. So there's an interplay between the two. If you go to a classical school, for example, the liberal arts and the great books, the great conversation are going to be a part of that umbrella. I think in the Catholic world, we like to emphasize liberal arts for a reason. I think in the United States, there's been a kind of history where the first people who really revived classical education were Protestant schools. And they did great work, right? Really helping to be pioneers in the United States. I think as Catholics, though, that it's more than that. Classical doesn't fully capture everything that we're about. It's ultimately for liberty. It's ultimately to make a gift of your life. So there's a rich interplay between the two words. Sometimes schools will emphasize classical, and there's a kind of narrative around that. Maybe it means you're a college prep school. Maybe it means you have a particular curriculum that you follow. And I think there's elements of that at Saint Agnes, right? Liberal arts, I think, captures a fuller picture, if you will. So the great books, of course, we want to teach seminar, we want to teach responsible inquiry, but we also want to teach the liberal arts as practitioners. We really want to dive into grammar, into arithmetic, and all these beautiful things. So, yeah.
I like that distinction of the timelessness of a class, just the term classical.
Yeah,
because I think that's true. I mean, there's just something objectively beautiful about some of these great choral works, which we get to see on full display at our orchestral masses here at Saint Agnes. There's something beautiful about classical art, and I think too, I've been reflecting on this myself, the term timeless as well, because I think there's kind of a misconception that timeless just means that it's been around forever, and that makes it timeless.
Right.
But I think the reality is that there's a practicality when something's timeless. It's versatile.
Yeah.
It can be used. It can be applied in a number of different situations.
Right.
Making it more practical.
Right.
So how can a classical liberal arts education then, what kind of difference does that then make practically in the lives of the students?
Yeah, absolutely. I think,
and families too.
Absolutely. And families. I've seen that in my own children and how the power it's had to form my family life. I think that's right. Timeless is the key there. And I think timeless not only in terms of the timeline of history, but also there's a universality to it, right? In other words, classical education isn't just about Greece and Rome. It may have begun there, right? But it's now about our humanity. It's the story of our humanity. So people of all races and tongues and ethnicities and nationalities, classical education is for them because we have a common humanity, right? And it's the church, funny enough, that's recognized that. In her mission to spread the gospel to all nations, realize there's something here that actually transcends Europe and Greece and Rome. There's something here, a spark that began, that speaks to the human heart. And you know what? I'll tell you, Neil, you see this in the eyes of the students when they encounter a great work, a beautiful piece of music. I love to do picture studies and look at beautiful paintings. And you see their hearts just come alive, right? Why? Because the classical artists are speaking to a common humanity. And the struggles that I have today with my friends, with social life, whatever my students are going through, classical education speaks into that as well, right? There's wisdom to be gained even for today. And so in that sense, it's immediately practical, right? In fact, I think a lot of the ills and ailments of our time are because we've forgotten some of this ancient wisdom. And in fact, I know that's the case, right?
Yeah.
That's absolutely the case. So our students are going to be prepared to go into a world that's kind of forgotten who it is and where it's going and what it's about, on fire and with knowledge and formation to really be leaders. And I think of my own children, it's not that any of them are like intellectually gifted or geniuses. They're just normal kids. They like to play with Legos. I got to tell them not to pick their nose. They're not geniuses, right? But you see the elevated vision they have for education. My son did a picture over the summer. Fascinating picture, and it was in colored pencil. And it was a ladder, and it was kind of going up into like the clouds, into the heavens. And it looked like Jacob's ladder from Scripture, and I thought, oh, that's fascinating. And there was a figure, a smaller figure, climbing the ladder. And then there were other people standing around the ladder and on the ladder itself. And so I asked my son, what is this? And he said, oh, that's a picture of school. And he was kind of struggling to articulate it. And I said, what do you mean? And he said, well, this is how I envision school, right? In his own words. And I said, well, tell me about who these figures are. And he said, well, I'm the person here climbing the ladder. And down here at the bottom, there's some people who are kind of saying things like, get off the ladder, go do this, come play games or whatever it might be. And then on this side of the ladder are my teachers. And they're telling me, keep going. You can do this. You can take one more step. And in his own sort of 3rd to 4th grade way, he was articulating this elevated vision of his education at Saint Agnes, to see that his teachers and his parents were there helping to climb this ladder. And at the top wasn't like a good career and a good job. It was the heavens. I thought it was a beautiful illustration of what we're about. Anyway, I kind of lost my train of thought, but I think that's what we're about, right? Like, and to form that in the students, to see that when they come to school, they have the right anthropology and ends in mind as well. I was with my Paideia class. I get to teach this awesome class on like thought and culture. It's beautiful. But I was asking them lots of questions. It's like, why are you here? And my parents sent me here and my grandparents went here and this is just where we've always gone. But why are you here? Why are you here? Well, my parents really liked the school and they sent me here. And I was like, right, why? Well, so I can get a good job and I want to go to college. College, of course. I said, those are good answers. But why?
Yeah.
Right? And ultimately we got to that vision. Well, so that I could be happy. Right? And that's what a classical liberal arts Catholic education is about, happiness. It's not about power or money. It's ultimately about beatitude, right? What the Greeks called eudaimonia, the life of blessedness. So it's a privilege to be able to work in a place where that's our goal, is to form that in our students.
Yeah, I can see that all the way through too. Yeah. Even thinking about these last few years, listening to the different speeches at graduation and hearing these classical figures quoted and the saints quoted and this always, I just think back to my, and maybe you too, our graduation speeches. And I gave one too. I mean, it was, it's fine. But I think back to those and the ridiculously of them.
Exactly. That's a good word.
And then I think to what I'm witnessing here in those speeches, and it's, obviously it's night and day, and it's a complete understanding of exactly. What are we called to, and an encouragement to to their classmates to go forth and keep up what's been instilled in their hearts here.
Right. And I think that's a perfect illustration, because when I go to the graduation too, you can tell that it's not just the 2 people who are speaking or the 3 people who are speaking. You look out at their classmates and you can see it in their eyes too.
Yes.
They believe what is being told them with all their heart. Yeah.
None of that. They're engaged and interested. Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And maybe, okay, I wasn't chosen to give a speech. I wasn't the valedictorian, but I believe that with all my heart. You get to see that too in the lower school. We have 6th grade speeches and kind of teaching them some rhetoric, teaching them how to do some public speaking and to speak of their time in the lower school before they move on to middle school. And same there. It's the same thing. You know, of course, they're 6th graders and they need some coaching with their teachers, but the beauty that comes out of those speeches is incredible. And I without fail, leave that closing assembly with a tear in my eye. I think that's what it's all about. Like, that's going to bring us back next year, next fall.
Yeah.
Say, that's it. Yeah.
I wanted to ask you about, because this is kind of a unique thing here, our lower school virtue assemblies. Mm-hmm. Can you talk a little bit about the value of those? I mean, yeah, you can talk more about it than I can, but just, again, like somebody who pops in to capture those moments, to see little, kindergartners, first graders up on our stage with the entire lower school filling the auditorium.
Yeah.
And totally attentive, totally encouraging of their classmates. And then to see just the beautiful wisdom that comes from these tiny humans.
Right?
Yeah. So what are virtue assemblies? Why do we do them?
Yeah, great question. I love them. They are a lot of work, is it, for the teachers, but they're worth it because you see their teaching opportunities. They were developed when I was a teacher here. Dr. Atkins really led the charge there, and many of the teachers that were here at that time. The religious sisters, of course, the Dominicans had a huge part to play. And we use Education and Virtue, which is one of their programs, to help us really teach the virtues. I think it's good to kind of zoom out and say, why virtue? Like, isn't it just about knowledge and facts? And Dante has this, to paraphrase him in the opening lines of, I think it's Purgatorio. It might be one of the books of the Divine Comedy. He says, facts are the footprints in the snow. Truth is the animal that left them behind, right? In other words, in order to be truly educated, we need to seek out with zeal the facts that lead to the truth, right? And so immediately you go, well, virtue is required, and actually, in fact, to be a great student. And so we see the life of the virtues as integral to our formation. In fact, in some ways, it's one of the most important things we can do for our students. So the virtue assemblies are really an opportunity to celebrate them and then to teach. They're teaching opportunities. And I think it's a great opportunity, too, to bring in the community, to say those who are kind of on the fringes and looking at Saint Agnes, those who are on the periphery, and then families, parents, grandparents will come, and they're always blown away by them.
Rightly so.
It's like, well, and I am too. It's like, you're a kindergartner, and you gave me the definition of prudence and several examples
magnanimity,
of magnanimity, the vocabulary that's there. And they're also like cute and fun and hilarious, but you walk away and you're like, I learned something from those kindergartners, and everybody else in this room did as well. And I had fun doing it. Mm-hmm. And boy, were they cute, Mm-hmm. So they're an awesome opportunity to celebrate the virtues. I think a school is only as good as what it celebrates, right? At Saint Agnes, we celebrate athletics, we celebrate sports, as we should, but all within the broader context of what we're about, and ultimately the life of virtue, right? So I think in the lower school, it's an opportunity to say, you may be a great football player, soccer player, you may be a great mathematician, but the ultimate goal here is the life of virtue. Why? Because, like I said earlier, the virtues are what actually make us happy, right?
Right.
I think the term virtue kind of gets a bad rap now. It can kind of seem like stingy and you're a rule follower. Mm-hmm. That's not at all how our ancestors thought of the virtues, right? Mm. It literally comes from that Latin word vir, manliness. These are virtues that made someone human and made someone free and ultimately happy. So I think it's good to give that to our students, and then also to call out when we see them being practiced, right? Mm-hmm. It's really hard as a teacher to judge the virtuous life. Like, how do I look at that student and say, you're really temperate, like you embody temperance, but I can see actions, right? I can see, you only had one cookie and you could have had 3. I can see these actions, and then I can praise those students when I see those actions. And in fact, I'm called to do that as a Catholic teacher. And I think that's a great opportunity to see our students go, not only do I know the definitions of the virtues, and I can tell you the 4 cardinal virtues, the theological virtues, all the other virtues that correspond to it, but I live it. And I'm called to live it even by my classmates. I think that's the other beautiful thing about St. Agnes in the lower school and upper school is when we give them that formation, that solid formation, They begin to educate themselves as well, which is exactly what you want.
Right.
Right. So it's not just that I'm doing this action because my teacher's looking over my shoulder. I'm doing it because I want it. And because I love my classmate, I'm going to remind him, hey, that's not the life of virtue. That's not what you're called to do. I see that all the time. And not in a way that's like you're snitching or you're a tattletale, but like they have been convinced that the life of virtue is actually the way to happiness and to holiness. And I want to give that to my classmate. So it's awesome. Yeah, the Virtue Assemblies. Our first one's going to be October 10th. And yeah, invite parents to come. It's going to be great. 4th grade will be leading that one. So
awesome.
Yeah.
I'll look forward to it.
Yeah.
Do you know what virtue it is?
I have to look at my calendar. We're looking at this year, the theme that I really want to emphasize.
Because it's themed every year,
There's
right?
a theme every year. Yeah, last year we looked at, I think, Eucharistic miracles, which is beautiful. This year I really wanted to focus with the students on what it means to be a student.
Okay.
Right. So this idea of vocation, all of our students ultimately are going to be called to live a life of vocation in the church, to marriage or family life, to religious life, priesthood, and that's great. But I think ultimately we want to say, in order to get there, right now in Providence, God has placed you here. Right. Right now you're a student, and that's beautiful. Like that's such an awesome opportunity. And I told the students during the opening assembly, I wish I could go back and be a student again. And I think all of your teachers would agree. Like you're living in a time when, like your best life right now, an opportunity to learn, to make friends, to grow, and to make a gift of your life. And I said, take full opportunity, full advantage of that opportunity. So throughout the year, our virtue assemblies are going to be focusing on the virtues of a student, circumspection, docility, and the saints and the great scholars of the church that correspond to those. Ultimately, so that our students can go, yeah, I'm going to dream big. I could be a brain surgeon. I could be an astronaut. I could be the next director of the lower school and principal. I could be a religious sister. But right now, what God's called me to do is learn my times tables and to do it with zeal. Right? And right now, I'm called to take correction from my teachers because I know my teachers love me, and that God wants to form me through them. That's what I'm called to do right now today. And that's what I want to emphasize this year.
Awesome. Yeah, I've seen that even, I've just got a preschooler, but I mean, for whatever reason, he came home the other day and said something very similar along those lines.
Is that right?
Daddy, my work is to be a student this year.
I love that.
Which I didn't tell him that. I don't know if he's just like trying to,
it worked.
I go to work every day and, I don't know if somehow he just, somehow he's kind of.
And at preschool too.
And
to
in preschool,
that.
4 or 5 years old. He's
amazing.
Figuring that out.
Well, when I go down to that preschool, I'm amazed at what they do. I'm absolutely amazed. I went to a preschool as a kid and it was nothing like that. It was arts and crafts time and snack time, which we do.
Yep.
But then there's also like deep spiritual formation, and you've got excellent, like those teachers down there are amazing. Yeah. And they know every kid and everything about his family and his history, and they love those students. They shepherd those students. So
he came home again last night. We're sitting around the dinner table and he's singing the song that Mrs. Kreitzman taught him. As for me and my house, I will serve the Lord. And I'm thinking, first of all, this is my house.
Right.
But you're totally right. We are serving the Lord here. But
that's awesome.
Again,
yes.
I wouldn't have known that scripture verse from anything else probably until I was in college.
Exactly. Right.
And so I had a great public school experience for the most part, and I'm so thankful that I was able to make the friends that I did and learn as much as I did. But that's where, again, I just think I see these as a parent now. I can look here and see the difference that an education at Saint Agnes, where we take the faith seriously.
Exactly.
We it's not just about learning things, but it's about putting them into practice. I can see the difference that's already making in my preschool age.
Isn't that amazing? I would say the same thing. My kindergartner, I didn't have to memorize scripture, I think, ever. Maybe in confirmation.
Yeah.
And you see these preschoolers and these kindergartners, and they're not only memorizing like rote memorization, they're learning them by heart. I think that's a good way to think of the work of memory, especially in a young student's mind, is really learning it by heart. So yeah, they learn the words and they learn the rhythm and they sing it, but they also live it. That's a song that's going to be with them. And it's pretty amazing when you speak to some of the upper school students that went through our lower school, and they'll recite poems that they learned in second grade. They'll sing songs that they learned in third grade with Miss Coleman or something like this, and it's with them for life. I think that's what we want, right? Isn't it? As they go out into the world, that we give them a torch that they can carry. In those dark moments, I can look back and go, here's these sacred memories, these formative memories that are still with me.
Yeah.
That's better than getting a great score on the ACT, getting into a great university. Those are important. But boy, if I have those memories and I know who I am, I'm an Aggie, right?
Yeah.
And I go out into the world knowing I'm an Aggie, I'm loved, and I have a fire in my heart that I want to give to others. Boy, that's it. And it begins right there in preschool.
Yeah. We're going to have what now? 15-year Aggies? And
Yeah, exactly. Right.
Yeah.
Incredible to think about that. And there will be some. There's already 12-year Aggies, and you can tell too, the ones that have been here for that long.
Yeah. And the bonds that they have with each other.
They have, the friendships that run deep. And they run into adulthood. I encounter alumni all the time. Yeah, we met each other in first grade. Marriages that come out of that, and new families that come out of that, but deep friendships.
Yeah.
Deep friendships that last a lifetime. So yeah, it's beautiful.
Yeah. Another new initiative that I still don't understand, or I have no idea what it is. Schole Days?
Yeah.
What is it?
Yes.
What's going on?
Exactly, yeah. It's coming up in my director's update. I'm going to highlight that as well. Yeah, so Schole, I pronounce it differently, but it's where we get the word school.
Schole.
Yeah, Schole. No. That's right. School. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's where we get the word school, and it really means leisurely learning. And when you think of school, you don't think of leisure often at all. I certainly didn't.
No.
But that's what it means, right? And you think of like the word academy. Academy comes out of the Greeks, and it means a grove of trees. It's a grove where ultimately minds can flourish as well. So these ancient words actually tell us something about what education's about. So Schole Days are on First Fridays, and we already have this special setup for First Friday Masses. And I think that's a beautiful tradition that we do at Saint Agnes, to say, let's honor the Sacred Heart of Jesus, this beautiful Catholic tradition. Go to Mass. Often it's a Latin Mass with the whole school, and unite in prayer. Great opportunity to really unite in prayer. And I think that's the first principle of education, Catholic education, is worship, right? To say, ultimately what we're about is to wonder and to learn to be free so that we might worship. Like the ancient Israelites, right? They're called into the desert. They're called to freedom, ultimately so they can worship God. So we begin there. But I think there's a practical thing there too, because what happens is you have a nice, beautiful long Mass, and now you think, I've got to squeeze in everything that I wanted to into a shortened schedule. That's not good for learning. It's not good for our teachers. And so Schole Days are an opportunity to say, let's take this day to really wonder, to dive deeply into those things that I haven't had time to, but are actually formative, and that allow my students to have those sacred memories, those formative memories that they can carry with them. So it's an opportunity to say, I haven't had a chance to really spend a lot of time on this poem, but we're going to sing this. We're going to memorize it. We're going to do some artwork with it. We're going to perform it for another class. This is a great book that I haven't had a chance to pick up yet. And we can just have our snack and sit and listen and read. And we can have a conversation about it, right? In a relaxed setting. Often, I tell my teachers, it's good to have a good armchair and a cup of coffee, right? And to teach from a place of leisure as well. The chair has always been like a symbol of teaching, right? Of the authority of teaching. And I think that's really important in our classrooms, and I see that in our classes, to sit down and to really have a human conversation with my students at their level. In science class, I haven't had an opportunity to launch those rockets that I've wanted to do. We've been studying some physics like in sixth grade, but we haven't had the time to get outside and actually do it. So sixth graders, our first Schole Day, designing rockets, paper rockets, and then they went out into the playground and launched them, and they had a little competition to see how far they went. And you have a guest speaker come in that maybe you're learning about insects, to have a scientist come in, to have somebody come in and share their bug collection, and to have the freedom to do that. Plan those longer field trips. So Schole Days are an opportunity to really sit back and deeply look and drink from the well of classical education without a lot of pressure. And to kind of give the teachers permission to say, these are like Sabbath days. These are days where we're still going to be learning, but we're going to be learning in this unique mode. Joseph Pieper, in his great work, where he's talking about leisure as the basis of culture, he says there's really two modes of the intellect, and we've kind of forgotten one of them. He says there's ratio, which is sort of this discursive knowledge, what we think of as school, right? The hard work and labor of school, memorizing rote facts, memorize, test, rinse, repeat, and forget often. But he said there's this other mode called intellectus. And intellectus is a kind of scene, right? When we look at a rose, our first intuition isn't to say, what's the chemical makeup of that rose? What kind of species? What's the color? Our first intuition is to go, that's beautiful, right? Stop and kind of smell the flowers. Intellectus is that kind of knowing, right? It's the knowing that we have with God in heaven, to look him face to face and to have a relationship. And yet to know that the knowledge there is infinite. I'm never going to actually plumb the depths of the full knowledge of God. And I just continue on that journey. That's true of our education here on earth as well. I'm never going to know it all. So I should enjoy the ride, enjoy the journey. So Schole Days are this beautiful opportunity to really focus on intellectus, right? There's a beautiful painting that maybe I've seen in the hallway, but I walk by it. I'm going to take my class there and stop and really look deeply. What do I see? And what's the evidence that I see for any interpretation that I have? And to say, this isn't for a grade necessarily. This isn't a homework assignment or a test. It's something that's beautiful. And you see, I saw this on the faces of students after our last Schole Day, and they were greeting their parents at parent pickup, and they had these smiles on their faces. They were talking about what they were learning. And the parents were like, what happened today? And I was like, well, this is what we should be doing all the time. And there's we have to get things done. So there's a practical element to education, right?
Yep.
We can't just sit in our armchair and read great books, as great as that is. But at the same time, if we lose sight of that, right, we've actually not formed the hearts and minds of our students. So it's a little Sabbath, a little rest every month to sit back and to say, let's go deep. Let's do something that's not only fun and enjoyable, but that's going to really form great memories in the hearts and minds of our students. But yeah.
One of the big things that we talk about a lot here is the respect that we pay towards parents as primary educators of their children. You mentioned the example of seeing the excitement on their kids' faces as they leave our school.
Yeah.
We are so thankful that parents do trust us to help and aid in this formation. Can you talk about that relationship between us as the school and you as an administrator and teachers and parents and how does that work here?
Absolutely. I think first and foremost, it's a place of gratitude to the parents who say, when you send your students to a school, you are entrusting your most precious thing, your children, your future, to an institution. And that's a deep act of trust. So I'm always filled with gratitude for the parents. That's the first place I go to. As a parent myself too, I get a lot of the struggles. It's not, as you know, not easy to be a parent, especially today. And so I think that's where we begin. And I'll be honest, you realize pretty quickly when you're a teacher that you can't do it all. There's so much you want to give to your students, but you can't do it all. And your time with them is actually limited. And you see them for this one academic year, and you see them for not even 200 days a year. And you think, how am I going to do this? I've got great hopes and dreams for all of them. And I think that's where you realize I don't have to do it all, in fact, because I have a partnership and an ally in the parents, right? I want to give a deep formation to the student. I'm going to do my best with the time I have, but I also trust as a school that the parents are on my side and they have a similar vision. They also want what's best for their kids, and they're going to continue to form them in the summers, at home, as they continue on the way. So those two, I think, are where I begin. Deep gratitude and trust, and also this recognition that I, in the midst of a school year, get this opportunity to work with the parents who are going to be with that child all the way through the rest of their lives, right? And so I have this freedom and this rest now as a teacher. I get to be a part of that story. I think too, it's really important for a school to have open conversations with parents, to say, where's the understanding and the misunderstanding, and how can we better as a partnership be on the same team for these students? So I always invite parents to come have a conversation with me, right? Sometimes emails, it's frantic, but I'll pick up the phone and call somebody, invite somebody in the office. And sure enough, as soon as you do that, you recognize the humanity of somebody else and you go, we're on the same page, actually. We want what's best for this kid. And that's beautiful, right? When you have the opportunity to go, these parents are our allies and they're here to help us as well. It's a great privilege. And not every school has a parent community that's like that understands education the way our parents do, that recognizes that the formation that we're given here has to continue in the home. Right? If I want my kid to be literate, and not only literate, but really love to read and to read great books, I know that his teachers are going to, of course, encourage that. I know that they're readers. They're going to read really good books in the classroom. But it also means that I have to be a great reader at home. And my kids have to see me sit down with a book and talk about these beautiful ideas at the dinner table. And my goal this year is in the lower school to really foster that, to say, can we think of homework and can we think of our relationship with the parents as fostering that dinner table conversation, right? What's going to happen today that's going to spill over into the dinner table? And not just this kid poked me at recess and I got this over here and I love gym class. Those are all great. But also I had this beautiful theological conversation about, freedom and God's foreknowledge. And I was having a conversation like that in 4th grade. And I know some of those conversations spilled over into the dinner table. So I see that as a great opportunity for both the parents to recognize we can't do it all at school, but also parents to recognize that I have a great ally in the school, that we're on the same page and we're trying to offer the same vision of life to our kids. Yeah, it's a privilege. Absolutely.
Yeah, it's got to be kind of it comes down to trust. I just keep coming back to that word. Yeah.
Exactly.
Trust
right.
on both ways, where you're entrusting your children to us.
Yeah.
And then we trust that at home as well, what we teach is going to be put into practice too.
Absolutely.
Right.
And you see that. And when you see that, boy, the kids, they're the best formed kids, because you can see, okay, everything that I'm telling them and trying to give them here, it's being reinforced at home and vice versa. So
yeah. So you spoke a little bit about a goal there, in continuing to foster that parent-school relationship. What other goals do you have in mind for this year? First year back is, you got to be realistic, right? You can't do too much, but at the same time, I'm sure you got plenty of ideas and things you'd love to accomplish this year.
Absolutely, yeah. How much time do you have? Right?
Let's see.
There's so many. I think one of the first is to really get to know the school as a leader. And I think when you're a new leader, a young leader, the temptation is to allow your zeal to kind of put you over your skis, if you will. But when you step into a position like this, where you fit within the context of a leadership team, and you have this really rich historical memory as an institution, you have to kind of step in with humility first. So my first goal is really to say, let me learn how to be a good leader in the context of Saint Agnes, and to learn the institution and to appreciate the good things that have happened so far. So I think you have to recognize as a leader that I stand on the shoulders of giants. There's so many people going back, how many years now, to 1885, 1888, who've laid the foundations of the school. And each of us plays a part in that story. So that's my first goal, is to really do that. I think the next goal is to really spend a lot of time with my faculty, right? Just like with a teacher, I cannot give what I do not have. If my teachers are siloed into their classrooms, they're not going to be able to really give a rich, deep formation to the students. And so that's always a temptation, right? I just do my thing here in this classroom. At St. Agnes, that's never our goal, right? We're a united faculty of friends. There's a common vision. And that means that we're learning together, right? It means that we're spending time together as a faculty consistently on a daily basis. We're checking in with one another. We're appreciating one another. We're reading great books together, right? So our faculty meetings aren't just, here's your to-do list, here's another email checklist. We got to get to the practical, but let's pray together, right? Let's go to the chapel together. Let's lift one another up in prayer. Let's read a great book about classical education, about the art and craft of teaching, and let's work on the supreme art together. And boy, you see that impacted. You go back to the classroom now, and what a student's receiving here in this second grade classroom is not that much different than what a kid's receiving over here in the sixth grade classroom, because we're a united faculty. So that's one of my big goals too. I think there's many others that I want to accomplish, and I think I have to recognize too that with an institution, it's always a slow turning ship, right? And that's what we've done over the last few decades. Saint Agnes has made huge progress. But in the moment, it's always been slow progress, right? Saint Thomas says, to the sea by the streams. So some of the things that I think we've gotten a lot better at, and this studio is a great example of it, is the aesthetic. That's what I want to focus on. In the lower school hallways and the classrooms, beautiful classical art, religious art, student work up in the hallways. And we're doing a good job there, but I think there's ways in which we can go from good to great.
Right, absolutely.
And, so that's a goal. And then I think, really to focus with my students on what it means to be a student, like I mentioned with that theme. So the Schole Days are a part of that, the virtue assemblies, and also to see that one of the jobs that I have in the lower school is to form the humanity of the students too. So it's not just simply about the facts; those are really important. The academics are the key; they're the heart of it. But also, how do I have a conversation? Right? That's part of my formation. How do I eat at the lunchroom in a civilized manner as part of it? How do I walk in the hallway and greet my friends, right? So that the life of virtue, the humanity of my students. And that means that I'm having lots of conversations with kids, going out to recess, to the lunchroom, trying to check in with them in the morning and greet them in the morning, and to begin there, right? To begin building up those relationships. Let's see, there's so many other goals, but those are a few of the ones that come top to mind. And really, the great thing about at Saint Agnes is all of those goals are appreciated, and there's people here who go, let's make these an achievable goal. Yep. What's the timeline? When can we achieve it? When do we invite in other people, other constituencies within our community? And let's not just set it on the shelf, but let's actually do it. Let's actually accomplish something, and do that in a way that's going to be good for our whole community. So. It's a great place to work in that sense. Yeah. You got so many people on your team. I think that's the other thing too. This goal this year is to really step back into teaching. I'm teaching this Paideia class. I love the fact that our leaders are teachers, because it means that we're not just bureaucrats in an office somewhere and pushing paper. Absolutely. It means we're leading out of a place of teaching. And I think that helps us keep our edge as teachers. It helps us to relate to the teachers under us as well. But it also it's more than that. It's what we're about, right? We're an educational institution. So that means our leaders understand what it means to go into a classroom of kids who are tired on a Friday afternoon and inspire them. Yeah. And if you don't know how to do that, you can't lead other teachers to do that as well.
I think I've heard Dr. Ferdinand echo a sentiment similar to that, where the headmaster is the head teacher of the institution.
Exactly.
And so similar then with lower school director, upper school director, is just, these administrative positions where if you're, I think it's an awesome, because my principal did just growing up.
Same with mine. Yeah. And he was a great guy, but wasn't a teacher necessarily. Right. Maybe he taught 20 years ago, but you lose a sense of what you're about if you don't teach. It's also, I love to nerd out on education, right? So I think it's an opportunity to go, how do I want to become a better teacher? That's probably where my faculty are as well, right? They all are zealous and want to learn too. So let's do it together. Yeah. So when we dive into the art and craft of teaching and we do professional development, it's not just me going, you're going to do this, you have to get better. It's, I want to too. I want to become a better teacher for these students. Let's do this together. Yeah.
How do you want to become a better teacher?
Yeah, absolutely. There's so many ways, right? I think it's now I've had the privilege of teaching across several grade levels, and that's a unique experience for me. I was used to being the classroom teacher, and I teach 9 and 10-year-olds. But now to go, okay, I'm going to teach third graders here, but I'm going to teach sixth graders here. So one of the things I want to really dive into is back into our Catholic anthropology and developmental psychology as well, to see what are those distinctions between third graders and sixth graders, right? And in general, what are those themes? And how do I speak to a third grader is going to be different than a sixth grader. What's going to inspire them might be slightly different. The responsibility that I can shift onto their shoulders is going to be different. And there's so many implications there that I think we can really dive into. In terms of classroom management and in terms of our pedagogy, how we implement the curriculum. So that's something I'm really excited about. I've been working with my lead teachers and my faculty to look at some of the things that we've been doing here, like education and virtue, raised in grace, some aspects of love and logic, but really these things that correspond to our Catholic anthropology so that we can become better shepherds, right? Not just giving these facts to the students, but really saying, I have to parent and kind of shepherd these souls under my charge, which means I have to know them well. So that's one way. I think the other way too is to say I've got to continue to wonder and be a student myself, like I mentioned, in the midst of a busy schedule. And that's a unique challenge, right? In my previous job with ICLE, I had time to read and to sit and actually like have conversations, and that's really hard. That's why I love this conversation. Yeah. It's really difficult to do that. But to prioritize that, I have to continue to be a disciple, to strive for holiness, and to be a student myself, because that's what's going to be the fruit and the fire that I bring into the classroom.
Right.
If I'm not learning constantly, I can't expect my students to as well. So those are a couple of things I really want to focus on this year, and I think that's the most enjoyable thing too. Right? It's the obstacle is the way. So
yeah. Well, I appreciate the acknowledgement that, and I think it's prudent to just recognize as well that these changes, these improvements, these ways in which we hope to grow aren't going to happen overnight.
Right.
And I think it's dangerous when we assume that they will, because it leads to dejection on our part and disappointment and
discouragement.
And you look at I think you look at particularly the ways in which, decades ago, the church in particular tried to implement and change things really quickly following the Second Vatican Council.
Exactly.
And instead of maybe taking the time, as the Council Fathers did, to sit and pray through things, it seemed like, and granted, I don't know, maybe I'm totally wrong on this, but based on the liturgy and the things that I grew up with and that we hear so much about, so
true growth is slow growth.
True growth, right.
I think that's true of our students too, right? We want to be patient with them and recognize, as I coach them, give them meaningful feedback in terms of their intellectual life, their academics, and in terms of the virtuous life, I have to recognize that there's a gradualism there, right?
Yeah.
I still hold up a high standard, but I know that it's going to take a long time for my students to get there. That's the same for us too, as an institution and as teachers. And I think what you mentioned there too is the key is that it begins in contemplation and prayer, right? This school is the Lord's school.
Yeah.
So any changes are not just, here's my idea and here's something more that we can do, an extra. It's no, as a community, let's go to the tabernacle. Let's go to the heart of the church in the Eucharist and say, Lord, this is your school. It's always been your school. What do you want for Saint Agnes? And that's what I love about this place, is that's where it always begins. Every faculty meeting, every conversation with another teacher begins in prayer. And our classes begin there. Because that's it. We don't want to be frenzied and frantic, right? And I think that's the joy of being a leader here too, is to say, ultimately, unless the Lord builds the house, in vain do its builders labor, right? This is the Lord's work. And that means that I'm going to learn this year as I figure out where are my limits and where is God going to test me and where do I drop the ball here and make mistakes. But ultimately, the Lord is the shepherd and the one teacher of this school. It's a great joy.
Yeah. Well, I'm so excited. It's been so great having you back.
Thank you, Neil.
When you left, I think I told you this, but I never took your constituent name. I unpublished you from our website, but I never took you off of I never deleted your profile because something told me he's got to come back. He can't.
Yeah. Prophetic. You knew.
So there was great joy in my heart this summer when I was able to click the check button and bring you back on.
Mine too. I tell you what. Yeah, I missed all of you guys, and I missed the families and the students, and excited for what the Lord's going to do this year and in the coming years. Catholic education is, we're at a turning point.
We are.
And I think we've recognized that the status quo of just doing what the public schools have done with a crucifix on the wall doesn't work anymore. And our other Catholic schools are waking up to that fact too. So Saint Agnes is really a part of that storied history of the renewal of Catholic education. So yeah, so glad to be back, Neil.
I can't wait to keep working with you and serving with you in this mission, brother.
Thank you, man. Thanks for the conversation.
Yeah, thank you.